It was a crisp, quiet evening in the small town of Ashford, where the golden sun began to dip behind the distant hills, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink. In a modest yet elegant house on the outskirts of town, preparations were underway for a grand wedding. The bride, Evelyn Carter, a woman known for her beauty and grace, was finalizing her dress, nervously smoothing the fabric as her mother and bridesmaids bustled around. But no one knew that, under the surface, a storm was brewing. A storm that would tear apart not just her family, but the very foundation of her life. Evelyn had always thought she had everything she could ever want: a perfect job, a beautiful home, and the love of her life, Lucas. Lucas Davis was the epitome of charm and charisma, and he had swept Evelyn off her feet the moment they met. They had been together for 3 years, and she could hardly believe that today would be the day they'd finally become husband and wife. But unbeknownst to Evelyn, Lucas had been hiding a secret, a dark secret that would unravel everything. As the night of the wedding approached, Evelyn's suspicions began to grow, though she couldn't quite place why. Was it his late nights at work? The coldness that seemed to slip into his voice whenever they spoke about their future? Perhaps it was nothing, or so she told herself. What Evelyn didn't know was that her brother Adam had also been involved in a secret that linked him to Lucas in a way that would shatter the very core of her existence. Adam had always been a protective older brother, though their relationship had been strained in recent years due to his own personal struggles. He had always been there for her when she needed him, but Evelyn hadn't seen much of him lately. He had his own life, after all. She hadn't thought twice when he told her he would be at the wedding, standing by her side as a groomsman. However, Adam wasn't just attending the wedding. He had his own private meeting with Lucas the day before, a meeting that would lead to an unthinkable chain of events. Late that evening, as the guests began to trickle into the grand hall, the air was thick with anticipation. Lucas stood by the altar, his handsome face lit with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. He had his own secrets, ones he feared Evelyn would uncover. But what he didn't know was that Adam was about to expose everything. The ceremony began and the couple exchanged vows in front of friends and family. Evelyn, in her beautiful white dress, looked radiant, her heart swelling with love for the man she thought she knew. But as she glanced toward the crowd, her eyes landed on Adam, who stood near the back, his expression unreadable. There was something about the way he looked at her that unsettled her, a tension she couldn't ignore. When it was time for the reception, the air seemed to crackle with unspoken tension. Drinks were flowing and laughter filled the room, but something felt off. Evelyn noticed Adam talking quietly to Lucas in a corner of the room. The conversation seemed private, intense, and Evelyn's stomach twisted in knots as she observed them. Why were they acting so strangely? Why had Lucas been avoiding her all evening? As the night wore on, Evelyn's suspicions grew stronger. She felt a gnawing sense of dread deep in her chest. Something was wrong, and she couldn't shake the feeling that her life as she knew it was about to be torn apart. The twist came just moments later. As the clock struck midnight, Evelyn received a text message. It was from an unknown number, presumably from the recovery room. "You don't know the truth about Lucas. Check his phone." The words hit her like a ton of bricks. Her mind raced as she tried to process the message. Why would someone send her such a cryptic warning? And why would they tell her to check Lucas's phone? She felt her pulse quicken as she glanced around the room, her eyes searching for Lucas. He was nowhere to be seen. Evelyn excused herself from the crowd, her heart pounding as she made her way to the back of the venue. She found the restroom, locked the door behind her, and quickly pulled out her phone. She had to know the truth. Opening her text messages, she found a conversation between Lucas and someone named L. The words in the messages were damning, messages that revealed a secret affair between Lucas and Adam, her own brother. Her hands trembled as she read each word, each exchange a revelation that shattered her perception of everything she had believed in. The affair had been going on for months. The lies, the deceit, the betrayal, it was all there in black and white. Evelyn's world tilted as the truth sunk in. Her mind raced. She had to confront them. She had to know why they had kept this from her. But as she stepped out of the restroom, her gaze met Adam's, who had somehow appeared right outside. His eyes were filled with guilt, a look she had never seen before. The battler. "Evelyn, we need to talk," Adam said, his voice low and shaky. But before Evelyn could respond, a chilling realization hit her. She knew what she had to do. Evelyn's breath caught in her throat as her eyes locked with Adam's. The truth felt like a weight pressing down on her chest, suffocating her, and she could feel her heartbeat quicken as the world around her seemed to blur. The smile she had worn moments ago, as she stood in front of the altar, was gone now, replaced by a cold, calculating resolve. "Evelyn, please, just listen," Adam's voice wavered. His usual confident demeanor was gone, replaced by an air of unease. "I've seen the messages, Adam," she whispered, her voice a mixture of fury and disbelief. "I know about you and Lucas. I know everything." Adam's face paled, and for a moment it seemed like time stood still. His eyes flickered to the floor, unable to meet hers. The silence between them was deafening, and Evelyn felt her world crumble. End of chapter 13. "Evelyn, it's not what you think," Adam began, but Evelyn's hand shot up, stopping him mid-sentence. "Not what I think?" she hissed, her voice rising. "You and Lucas, you both betrayed me. All this time, all the lies, and you think I'll just forgive you? Just forget about it?" Her emotions surged, each wave of anger, hurt, and betrayal crashing over her, drowning her. This was supposed to be the happiest day of her life, but instead it was turning into a nightmare she couldn't escape. Adam stepped closer, but she took a step back, her hand instinctively reaching into her purse, where a small, cold object nestled. Her phone. It felt like her only lifeline now, but as she gripped it, her gaze shifted toward the door. Lucas wasn't there, but she couldn't help but wonder if he was watching from somewhere, waiting for the right moment to reappear. You're supposed to be my brother," she said quietly, her voice trembling. "I trusted you. I loved you. And you did this. Why? How could you do this to me?" I didn't mean for it to happen like this," Adam whispered, his voice broken. "It just happened, and I tried to end it, Evelyn, but then Lucas. He kept pushing and I couldn't stop myself. I didn't want to hurt you. You have to believe me." Her chest tightened. It wasn't just the affair. It wasn't just the lies. It was the fact that her own flesh and blood had been involved in this twisted betrayal. It made her sick to her stomach. Evelyn's hands trembled as she gripped the edge of the sink, her reflection staring back at her from the bathroom mirror. The woman she saw in the glass was not the same one who had walked down the aisle just hours ago. She was different, shattered. Her world was no longer whole, and for the first time in what felt like forever, Evelyn didn't know who to trust. "You love him?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Adam didn't answer immediately, and for that moment Evelyn thought the air between them might swallow her whole. I don't know what to say," Adam finally admitted, his voice strained. "I thought I could handle it. I thought maybe it was just a phase, but it wasn't. And now I'm lost, Evelyn. I'm sorry." Evelyn closed her eyes, feeling a tear slide down her cheek. The weight of everything she had just learned, the heartache, the pain, it felt unbearable. But she couldn't let herself break. "Not now. I'm not sure I can forgive you," she said, her voice steady despite the turmoil inside. "I don't know if I ever will." Adam looked at her with raw, desperate eyes, and for a moment, Evelyn saw the brother she once knew, the one who had protected her, the one she had loved. But that man was gone. In his place was someone she didn't recognize. Her thoughts were clouded, but one thing was clear. She couldn't let this go, not when the man she had trusted, the man she was supposed to marry, had done this to her. The door creaked open behind her, and there he was, Lucas. His face was a mask of guilt and fear. His eyes, once filled with adoration for her, now seemed distant, cold. And Evelyn knew then that everything she had built with him, everything she thought they were, was a lie. "I'm sorry, Evelyn," Lucas said softly, his voice trembling. "I didn't want it to happen like this. I never meant for you to find out this way." "You didn't want me to find out," Evelyn repeated, the venom in her words sharp. "And yet, here we are. I have to thank you for one thing, though." She stepped toward him slowly, her eyes hardening. "You've just shown me the truth." Her heart pounded in her chest as she felt her fury rise once again. Lucas reached for her, but she slapped his hand away with force, her whole body shaking with the strength of her emotions. Her chest felt tight, as though the weight of the revelation was pushing all the air from her lungs. "I don't want anything from you," she spat. "Not your apology, not your excuses, nothing." Evelyn turned away from him, her breath coming in shallow gasps. She didn't know what to do, how to move forward. Her life had just crumbled, her family torn apart, and the man she had loved for years was nothing more than a stranger now. "Espra!" Evelyn turned. Suddenly there was a sharp, ear-splitting sound that cut through the tension in the room. A gunshot. The noise reverberated through the walls, and for a moment, everything stopped. Time seemed to freeze as the shock of what had just happened registered in Evelyn's mind. The figure in front of her, Lucas, suddenly staggered, his body jerking slightly before collapsing to the floor in a heap. It was Adam. Her brother had fired the shot. Evelyn's heart stopped as she stared at Lucas's lifeless body sprawled on the ground. The world around her seemed to blur, and all she could hear was the pounding of her own heartbeat in her ears. The silence in the room was deafening, and for a moment everything was suspended in time. She didn't know what to do, where to go, or how to react. Adam stood frozen, the gun in his trembling hands. His face was pale, his eyes wide with a mix of horror and regret. The echo of the shot still rang in her ears, and her body felt numb, as though she were watching everything unfold from a distance, unable to move or think clearly. "Adam?" Evelyn whispered, her voice shaky. Her mind couldn't grasp what had just happened. The reality of the situation was too much to bear. She had just learned the worst betrayal of her life, an affair between her fiancé and her brother. And now this. Adam's hand shook as he lowered the gun, his expression one of devastation. "Evelyn, I didn't mean to—" "You didn't mean to," she interrupted, her voice rising in disbelief. "You just shot him. You killed him." The words hung in the air, and Evelyn could barely comprehend the magnitude of what had just occurred. She felt the weight of everything, her anger, her hurt, the shock of Lucas's betrayal, and now this horrifying act of violence that had shattered the last remnants of her life. Adam took a tentative step toward her, his voice filled with desperation. "I didn't know what else to do. You don't understand. He was going to ruin everything. He didn't care about you, Evelyn. I had to stop him before it was too late." Evelyn took a step back, her eyes never leaving Lucas's body, which now lay motionless on the floor. The blood spreading beneath him was a stark reminder of the chaos that had just unfolded. Exercising and clenching your jaw to help brace the skull will help to balance the brain. You killed him to protect me?" she asked, her voice trembling with disbelief. "You think this is protecting me? You've just destroyed everything, Adam. My life, my family, everything is gone now." Adam's eyes filled with tears, his face contorted with regret. I I thought you deserved to know the truth, but I didn't want you to be hurt. I couldn't let him get away with it, Evelyn. He was going to leave you. He was going to destroy you, and I couldn't let that happen." Evelyn shook her head, unable to process the whirlwind of emotions that churned within her. She was numb with shock, and yet there was something deeper, something darker that was beginning to take root in her soul. Anger, rage, a need for revenge. "Leave me," she spat, her voice cold and final. "Just leave." Adam stood frozen, the gun now hanging limply at his side as though unsure of how to act, unsure of how to undo the damage that had been done. But Evelyn didn't want him near her. She didn't want anyone near her right now. With a final glance at her brother, Evelyn turned and fled the room. She ran through the hallways of the venue, her mind a blur of images: Lucas, Adam, the gunshot. She couldn't think straight. Her world had fallen apart, and she felt as though she were suffocating. She burst through the back door into the cool night air, gasping for breath. The stars above seemed distant and cold, mocking her as she stumbled into the darkness. What was she supposed to do now? What kind of life awaited her after this? Suddenly, a hand grabbed her wrist. Evelyn spun around, her heart racing as she tried to yank away, but the grip was firm. "Let go of me!" she screamed, but the voice that answered was not Adam's. It was Lucas's. But how? Her eyes widened in shock as she stared at him, his face pale but very much alive. He looked dazed, confused, and covered in blood, but it was unmistakably him. "You," Evelyn's voice cracked. "You're alive?" Lucas staggered toward her, his face contorted with pain. I don't know how I'm still alive, but I am. Adam didn't aim properly. He missed my heart. Just listen to me." Evelyn's mind raced, and she struggled to comprehend what was happening. Was this real? Was she imagining this? Had Adam somehow not killed him after all? "I had to do this," Lucas continued, his voice weak but urgent. "I was going to leave you, Evelyn. I know I betrayed you, and I was planning on telling you everything, but Adam, he found out, and he wasn't going to let it happen. He thought he was saving you." Evelyn's heart pounded in her chest. She was caught in a whirlwind of emotions, her mind reeling. Her brother had shot him, but now he was here, alive, standing in front of her. But was this just another lie? Another manipulation? "Why didn't you tell me?" Evelyn whispered, her voice breaking. "Why didn't you tell me the truth about what you were doing? Why did you let me live in this delusion? Why?" The thought shook me. Lucas winced in pain, clutching his side, his face contorted with guilt. "I'm sorry, Evelyn. I never wanted to hurt you. I loved you, but I was caught up in something I couldn't control. I didn't want to destroy you, but I did." Evelyn's mind was in turmoil. This man, the one she had trusted with her heart, had been deceiving her all along. And now, her own brother had resorted to murder to keep her from the truth. She took a step back, her breath coming in sharp gasps. I can't do this. I can't be with someone like you. I can't even look at you anymore." Lucas reached out, his voice pleading, but Evelyn pulled away, shaking her head. "Just go, Lucas. Please. I don't want anything to do with you anymore." For a moment he stood there, broken and defeated. Then, with a final glance, he turned and stumbled away into the night. Evelyn stood alone in the cold, her heart shattering in her chest. She had lost everything, her trust, her love, and the family she thought she could count on. The man she had loved had betrayed her, and her brother had gone to unspeakable lengths to protect her from the truth. But the truth was more than she could bear. As she walked away into the night, her thoughts were consumed by one question. What was left for her now? As Evelyn walked away into the darkness, each step felt heavier than the last. The night was cold, the air sharp against her skin, but it couldn't numb the emptiness she felt inside. Her heart, once full of love and hope, was now a hollow shell, shattered by the truth. There was no going back, no undoing what had been done. The man she had loved, the man she had trusted, had been nothing but a liar, a traitor. And her brother, the one person who was supposed to protect her, had taken a life in a desperate, misguided attempt to save her from the pain of betrayal. But in the end, it had only caused more destruction, more heartbreak. She had lost everything. As she reached the edge of the town, where the lights of the city flickered like distant stars, Evelyn felt a strange sense of peace settle over her. It wasn't the peace of resolution or closure. It was the peace of knowing that for the first time in a long while, she was truly alone. No one to deceive her, no one to hurt her. She stood there, looking out into the vast emptiness before her, her thoughts swirling with a mixture of anger, sadness, and disbelief. But deep down, she knew that this was not the end. It couldn't be. Life had to go on, no matter how broken she felt. With a final, trembling breath, Evelyn took her first step into the unknown. The past was behind her, and the future, no matter how uncertain, was waiting. And so, the story of betrayal, love, and loss came to an end. Not with an explosion of drama or a clear resolution, but with the quiet, haunting steps of a woman who had been broken, but was not yet defeated. The end.